So here we are. I'm attempting to change out my rear wheel bearings. I was riding yesterday and the chain came off and there was play in the back wheel, and it turned out that is the problem, is the back left wheel bearing. That's what's left of it. Part of it's still in there. I need to get that out. So you tap that out with a screwdriver and a hammer basically. And then if you look on the other side, there is one on this side. And I'm going to go ahead and attempt to replace both of them, I think, because more than likely that one's going to go next. But I have this other front wheel that I took off and switched out with this one when I put on the front brake on the MB200 here. And so I had to loosen the back bolts. Managed to get the chain off without breaking the chain, and slide the brake out, and then loosen the chain and all that, and then you take off that back axle bolt and then slide the tire off. And then now I'm going to attempt to tap out the bearings. There's what's left of them, and then replace the bearings with these bearings. There's bearings in this wheel that I could use. Thought about ordering new ones, but this was fairly new when I replaced it. I think these should be okay for a little bit if I can get them out without messing them up. So you got to be careful when you're tapping them out not to damage them. But when all that dirt and grime gets in there, it basically grinds down the balls in the bearings, and then the bearings get shot, and then the wheel will not turn properly. There you go. Okay. Well, I'm dealing with, I think I may just order some new bearings for this wheel. I couldn't get those out, so I've got one there. It seems fine, but I'm going to go ahead and order 2 new bearings and put them in and then reinstall the wheel. In the meantime, I'm changing the spark plug, and I may also change the oil here and clean the carburetor and stuff while I'm messing around. But definitely want to run the engine. And it's not a good idea to run the engine with the chain hanging off like that, so you should go ahead and take the chain off. But I need to get a chain breaker to break the chain. I think you can do it with pliers, but I'm somewhat new to that, so I'm going to get a breaker, and I'm going to change the plugs. So the plug can definitely use it. It actually looks worse than it does in the video, but in person. But I'm going to go ahead and change it. I mean, this could keep going. You could clean this with some sandpaper, but if you see how dark it is, and then you look at the brand new one, that one looks nice and shiny, and good contact there for starting, the spark. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it out. Okay, so I went ahead and took the sprocket off, and those sprocket bolts that I took out are bent from when the chain came off, so I'm gonna have to order new sprocket bolts and a set of bearings, and I may go ahead and just order a larger sprocket and a bigger chain and just go ahead and trick this thing out. And anyway, that should give it more power if I do that. You can see that's the one of the bearings, and then the one that blew out. And I'm still trying to get that back part of the bearing out of there. As you can see, it's still in there, but I can't seem to get it out. So I thought if I took the sprocket off, I might be able to better access it. So hopefully I can get that out. Then I'll just install 2 new bearings, a larger sprocket for more power with a bigger chain, and you should be good to go. And then I'm going to change the oil, maybe clean the carburetor, and this sucker will be like new. Thought about getting some new tires. These tires are starting to wear down, but they might have some more mileage on them anyway. But like when I'm going around corners now, the front especially is starting to slip a little bit. I mean, they look pretty good, but this gravel that I'm riding on really wears them down. So there you go. Okay, so getting out this rest of this bearing was very difficult. It was stuck in here, and I ended up having to spray it with WD-40. You can see it, it was like rusted in there, seized up, rusted in there. And so if you can't get the bearing that's shot, part of it's still stuck in there, use some WD-40, loosen that sucker up, and then you can actually use this part of the axle rod. I actually used this end over here and hammered it with a hammer to knock it out. And I worked on it with screwdrivers. I worked on it with everything, drumstick, multiple screwdrivers, a crowbar. I could not get this thing out. And so I think the trick was the WD-40 to loosen it up. And then, it's hard. You have to have a pretty long tool to get in there because most of the screwdrivers aren't long enough, even the really long ones. And so using the end of that, just make sure you don't booger it up too much or it'll, mess up putting the nut back on. So there you go. So now I just need to get a couple of brand new bearings, which I thought about taking them out of there, but I can't even get those out. Plus, those have been used. I want to get new ones that are like greased and ready to go. So there you go. So now we're ready for phase 2, putting the bearings in and putting this sucker all back together. Putting the chain back on. I'm going to get another larger sprocket, longer chain, maybe even upgrade my shocks. We'll see. Depends on what I can afford.